On my 54th birthday they handed me divorce papers wrapped in a bow. I should have screamed. I should have collapsed. I should have begged William, my husband, my partner, the man I'd built an empire beside, to tell me this was some cruel joke. But instead I did something that made them all shift uncomfortably in their designer clothes. I smiled. Because while they were busy sharpening their knives to stab me in the back, they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was the one who'd taught them where to aim. My phone hasn't stopped ringing in 7 days. 45 missed calls. 45 desperate attempts to undo what cannot be undone. William's name flashes across the screen again and I let it ring. Let it scream into the void like I'd wanted to scream that night. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the moment my world ended, and theirs began to crumble. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video from, and if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. The morning of my 54th birthday arrived cold and gray, the kind of October day where autumn had forgotten how to be beautiful. I woke alone in the king-sized bed William and I had shared for over 2 decades, his sides still perfectly made. He'd been sleeping in his office more frequently lately, or so he claimed. The financial reports needed reviewing. The contracts demanded attention. The business was expanding. I'd believed every word because that's what good wives do. We believe. We trust. We make excuses for the people we love until those excuses become lies we tell ourselves. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing the cream silk blouse William once said made my eyes look like warm honey. My dark hair, now threaded with silver I'd stopped dyeing years ago, fell in soft waves past my shoulders. The mirror reflected a woman who looked tired. Not from age but from the exhausting work of holding a family together with increasingly fragile threads. You look beautiful, Eleanor, I whispered to my reflection, practicing the self-affirmation my therapist had recommended. But the words felt hollow, like speaking into an empty room that had forgotten how to echo. The house was quiet as I descended the grand staircase, my fingers trailing along the mahogany banister I'd refinished myself during our first year here. Every corner of this mansion held memories. Chloe taking her first steps in the foyer, William and I slow dancing in the living room at midnight on New Year's Eve, family dinners in the formal dining room where laughter once filled the spaces between courses. Now the silence felt deliberate, almost calculated. I found William in his study, hunched over his laptop, his reading glasses perched on his nose. At 57, he was still handsome in that distinguished way that age had been kind enough to grant him. Silver temples, sharp jawline, broad shoulders that filled out his expensive suits. I used to love watching him work, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the slight twitch of his lip when he solved a particularly complex problem. "Good morning," I said softly, lingering in the doorway. He didn't look up. "Morning." The word was flat, perfunctory, the kind of greeting strangers exchange in elevators. I waited for him to remember, to acknowledge, to say the 2 simple words that would have cost him nothing. "Happy birthday." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I thought maybe we could have breakfast together? I tried to keep my voice light, unburdened by expectation. "I could make those blueberry pancakes you love." "I already ate." His fingers continued typing, the clicks sharp and final. "Oh." I gripped the doorframe, feeling suddenly foolish for hoping. "Well, perhaps later." "Eleanor, I'm busy." "We'll talk tonight." "We'll talk tonight." Those words should have warned me. They carried weight, a gravitas that sat heavy in my chest as I retreated to the kitchen, suddenly alone in a house filled with expensive furniture and empty promises. I made myself tea and sat at the breakfast nook, watching October rain begin to streak the windows. My phone remained stubbornly silent. No calls from Chloe, my daughter, my only child, the girl I'd sacrificed my own career for so she could have every opportunity I'd never received. She was 27 now, beautiful and brilliant, and working as vice president of marketing at Williams & Associates, the company her father and I had built from nothing. The company that bore his name alone, though my hands had been just as dirty, my hours just as long, my sacrifices just as great. I'd signed the papers making William sole owner 5 years ago. "Just a formality," he'd said. "For tax purposes. It'll be easier this way. Trust me, Eleanor." I'd sign because wives who love their husbands don't question. They trust. They believe. They sign. The day crept forward with agonizing slowness. I cleaned rooms that were already spotless, organized closets that needed no organizing, watered plants that weren't thirsty. Anything to fill the hours, to quiet the growing unease that had taken root in my chest like a tumor. At 3 o'clock, Chloe finally called. Mom. Sorry I haven't called earlier. Crazy day at work. Dad and I are planning something special for tonight. Be ready by 7, okay? Wear that black dress, the one with the pearls. My heart lifted despite myself. Really? Oh, sweetheart, you didn't have to. Of course we did. It's your birthday, Mom. 7 o'clock sharp. Don't be late to your own party. She laughed, that bright musical sound I'd adored since she was a baby, and hung up before I could respond. A party. They'd remembered after all. The relief was almost painful, flooding through me like warmth returning to frozen limbs. I'd been silly, paranoid, letting my insecurities poison what should have been a beautiful day. I spent the next 3 hours transforming myself. The black dress fit perfectly, hugging curves I'd maintained through disciplined morning runs and careful eating. The pearl necklace William had given me on our 20th anniversary sat cool against my collarbone. I applied makeup with a careful hand, not too much, never too much. William preferred natural beauty, he always said. At precisely 7 o'clock, I descended the stairs to find the living room transformed. Candles flickered on every surface. A bottle of champagne chilled in an ice bucket. William stood by the fireplace in his best suit, and Chloe perched on the sofa in a red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. They looked beautiful together, father and daughter, dark-haired and confident, the picture of success. There she is. William's voice boomed across the room, but something in his smile didn't reach his eyes. The birthday girl. I moved toward them, my heels clicking on the marble, my heart full of foolish hope. Chloe rose gracefully, holding 2 champagne flutes. Happy birthday, Mom, she said, pressing a glass into my hand. We raised our glasses and I waited for the toast, for the warm words about family and love and another year of blessings. Instead, William cleared his throat. Eleanor, there's something we need to discuss. The champagne turned sour on my tongue. Discuss. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Cream-colored, expensive stock, my name written across the front in professional script. Not his handwriting. Something official. Something that made my hands shake as he held it out to me. What is this? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Open it. I set down my champagne flute on the nearest table, my fingers suddenly clumsy as I tore open the envelope. The words swam before my eyes. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Legal jargon. Date stamps. William's signature already affixed at the bottom, next to an empty line waiting for mine. You're divorcing me? The words felt foreign, impossible. On my birthday? It seemed as good a time as any. William's voice was matter-of-fact, discussing the weather or dinner plans. Everything is outlined in the documents. The house goes to me, it's in my name as you'll recall. The company is mine. The assets have been divided according to the prenuptial agreement you signed. Prenuptial agreement? We never. My mind raced backward, searching through years of memories. That wasn't a prenup. You said those were insurance documents, that we needed them for the business. You signed them, Eleanor. Your signature is quite clear. He smiled then, and it was the smile of a stranger. You should have read more carefully. The room tilted. I gripped the back of the sofa for balance, staring at this man I thought I knew, searching for any trace of the person I'd loved for 26 years. William, I don't understand. If this is about money, we can discuss. It's not about money. He picked up his champagne, swirling it casually. It's about moving forward. You've been stagnant, Eleanor. Holding me back. Holding us back. He gestured vaguely toward Chloe, who stood silent, watching me with something I couldn't quite name in her eyes. Holding you back? My voice cracked. I gave up everything for you. My career, my ambitions, my... Yes, we've heard this story. Chloe's voice cut through the room like a blade. She rolled her eyes, and took a long sip of champagne. The martyred mother routine is getting old, Mom. I turned to face my daughter, my baby girl, the child I'd cradled through night terrors and nursed through fevers and cheered for at every school play and soccer game. Chloe, what are you saying? I'm saying you're pathetic. She said it simply, casually, as if commenting on the weather. Always hovering, always needing validation, always playing the victim. It's exhausting. The word hit me like a physical blow. Pathetic. Your mother and I haven't been happy for years, William continued, his tone almost gentle now, which somehow made it worse. We stayed together for you, Chloe, but you're an adult now. You understand these things. People grow apart. It happens. Of course I understand, Dad. Chloe moved to stand beside her father, a united front. I've been telling you to do this for months. Months. They'd been planning this for months. There's also the matter of the house, William continued, pulling another document from his jacket. Eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Eviction? This is my home. It's my house, Eleanor. Always has been. Check the deed. My legs gave out. I sank onto the sofa, the divorce papers crumpling in my shaking hands. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare, a hallucination, something my mind had conjured from stress and loneliness. I suppose we should tell her about Vivian, Chloe said, a cruel smile playing at her lips. William shot her a warning look, but she ignored him. Vivian, I whispered. Dad's girlfriend. Chloe examined her manicured nails. She's 32. Works in accounting. They've been together for 3 years. He paused, letting that sink in. She's pregnant, by the way. So you'll need to clear out the master bedroom. They'll need space for the nursery. 3 years. While I'd been making his favorite meals and pressing his shirts and believing his lies about late nights at the office, he'd been building a new life with someone young enough to be his daughter. Someone who would give him what I couldn't. More children, a fresh start, a wife who hadn't been worn down by years of service. The room seemed to contract, the walls pressing in. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only stare at these two people who wore familiar faces but had become complete strangers. Why? The question came out broken. Why like this? Why on my birthday? William shrugged. You've been asking what I wanted for dinner tonight for weeks. I figured I'd give you a definitive answer. This is what I want, Eleanor. A divorce. My house back. My life back. Chloe laughed. Actually laughed. A bright, tinkling sound that belonged at cocktail parties, not at the scene of my execution. Honestly, Mom, you should see your face right now. It's priceless. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, that would come later, but cracked, letting cold air into spaces that had been warm with hope. I looked at the papers in my hands. My marriage, reduced to legal terminology and property division. My life, summarized in bullet points. My worth, calculated and found wanting. There's a pen on the table, William said, gesturing toward the coffee table where an expensive fountain pen lay waiting, part of the choreographed cruelty of this moment. I picked up the pen. It was heavy, solid, probably cost more than my wedding ring had. My hands trembled as I uncapped it, the nib gleaming in the candlelight they'd set up for this mockery of celebration. Eleanor, William's voice held a note of impatience now. Let's not drag this out. Sign the papers. Make this easy on everyone. Easy. He wanted easy. I looked up at him, this man I'd loved since I was 28 years old. I'd met him at a business networking event, been charmed by his ambition and confidence. He'd promised me the world, partnership, equality, a love that would weather any storm. And I'd believed him because I was young and hopeful and stupid enough to think promises meant something. Do you remember our wedding vows? I asked softly. He shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor. For better or worse. In sickness and in health. Till death do us part. My voice was steady now, each word precisely articulated. I meant every word. Did you? People change, he said simply. I've changed. You haven't. That's the problem. She hasn't changed because she's boring, Chloe chimed in, refilling her champagne. Same routine every day. Same boring conversations. Same pathetic attempts to be relevant. It's like living with a ghost. I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, cruel daughter, and wondered where I'd gone wrong. I'd given her everything, supported every dream, celebrated every achievement. And somehow, I'd raised a woman who could stand here and eviscerate me with a smile on her face. You think I'm pathetic, I said quietly. I don't think it, Mom. I know it. Chloe leaned against the mantel, looking almost bored now. You gave up everything to be someone's wife and mother, and now look at you. No career, no friends, no life of your own. Just empty. Empty. The word echoed in my head, finding truth in the hollow spaces. At least Vivian has ambition, William added as if this would somehow help. She understands the sacrifices necessary for success. She doesn't burden me with constant emotional needs. I nodded slowly, letting their words wash over me like poison. And then something happened that I didn't expect. I started to smile. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't warm or forgiving. It was the smile of someone who had just realized they'd been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. The smile of someone who'd been underestimated for far too long. "You're right," I said softly, picking up the pen again. "I have been pathetic. I've been weak. I've been everything you say." I placed the papers on the coffee table, smoothing them flat with careful precision. The pen hovered over the signature line. "Eleanor, what are you?" William started, but I held up my hand. "I'm signing." My voice was calm, almost cheerful. "Isn't this what you want?" I signed my name with a flourish. Eleanor Whitmore. Soon to be just Eleanor again, stripped of the identity I'd worn for over 2 decades. Each letter was perfect, no trembling, no hesitation. I stood, setting the pen down with a soft click against the marble table. William and Chloe watched me with expressions of surprise mixed with relief. They'd expected tears, begging, a scene that would make them feel powerful and justified. Instead, I smoothed down my black dress, adjusted my pearls, and picked up my champagne flute. "To new beginnings," I said, raising my glass. They hesitated, then joined the toast, confusion flickering across their faces. I drained my champagne in one long swallow, set the empty glass precisely in the center of the coffee table, and walked toward the foyer. "Where are you going?" William called after me. I paused at the base of the stairs, looking back at them framed in the candlelight. The man who'd betrayed me and the daughter who'd betrayed me, standing together in the house I'd made a home. "To pack," I said simply. "You gave me 30 days, but I don't need them. I'll be gone by morning." "Mom." For the first time, uncertainty crept into Chloe's voice. "Thank you for the birthday party," I continued, my smile never wavering. It was exactly what I deserved. I climbed the stairs without looking back, my heels clicking a steady rhythm against the wood. Behind me, I heard William and Chloe begin to argue in hushed tones, but their voices faded as I reached the master bedroom. Our bedroom. His bedroom. Soon to be his and Vivian's bedroom, with a nursery for the baby that would replace the daughter who'd been discarded like I had. I didn't cry. Tears would come later, in the dark hours of the night when I was alone in whatever cheap hotel room I could afford. For now, I moved with mechanical efficiency, pulling out suitcases, filling them with clothes and personal items. I left behind everything he'd given me: jewelry, expensive dresses, the fur coat he'd surprised me with last Christmas. I wanted nothing that carried his fingerprints. In the back of my closet, buried under shoeboxes, I found a small wooden box I'd forgotten about. Inside lay the remnants of my life before William. My college diploma, photographs of friends I'd lost touch with, a business card from the consulting firm that had wanted to hire me all those years ago, and a small leather notebook filled with handwritten notes and calculations. I slipped the notebook into my purse, zipped it closed, and continued packing. By midnight, 3 suitcases sat by the bedroom door. I'd stripped the room of everything that was mine, leaving behind only the ghost of the woman I'd been. I took one last look around, at the bed where I'd slept alone for months, at the vanity where I'd made myself beautiful for a man who no longer saw me, at the window overlooking gardens I'd planted with my own hands. "Goodbye," I whispered, to the room, to the house, to the life I'd built on foundations of sand. I carried my suitcases downstairs one at a time. The house was dark now, William and Chloe long since retired to their respective rooms. They probably thought I was upstairs crying, breaking down, becoming the pathetic creature they'd labeled me. They were wrong. I loaded my car in the darkness, the October rain soaking through my clothes, turning my carefully styled hair into wet ropes. I didn't care. I was baptizing myself in water and sorrow, washing away the old Eleanor, preparing space for whoever would emerge from this catastrophe. I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the mansion lit by moonlight. Every window held a memory. Every door a goodbye. This place had been my entire world, and now my world was 3 suitcases and a leather notebook filled with secrets they'd forgotten I kept. I started the engine. I drove away without looking back. The Sunset Motel on Highway 9 was exactly what you'd expect from a $40 night establishment. worn carpet the color of cigarette smoke, a bathroom that smelled of industrial cleaner and broken dreams, and a bed that creaked if you breathed too hard. But it had a lock on the door and no memories, which made it perfect. I spent the first night sitting on that bed, still in my black dress and pearls, staring at my phone as it buzzed with texts I didn't read. Finally, around 3 in the morning, I turned it off completely. The silence was so profound it had weight, pressing down on my chest until breathing became a conscious effort. That's when the tears finally came. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen shut. I cried for the 26 years I'd given to a man who'd calculated my worth and found it insufficient. I cried for the daughter I'd raised who'd learned to weaponize love. I cried for the woman I'd been at 28, full of ambition and fire, who'd believed partnership meant something more than signing away her future one document at a time. But mostly I cried because I'd let them do this to me. I'd been complicit in my own destruction, signing papers I hadn't read, trusting promises that should have come with expiration dates, making myself smaller and smaller until I'd almost disappeared. Almost. The next morning, I looked at myself in the motel bathroom's harsh fluorescent light. My face was puffy, my eyes bloodshot, my hair a tangled mess. I looked like someone who'd lost everything. And perhaps that's exactly what I needed to look like. I showered, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, clothes that felt strange after years of maintaining appearances, and retrieved the leather notebook from my purse. I'd started keeping it years ago, back when William and I were building the business together. Back when I was still Eleanor Whitmore, MBA, the woman with the brilliant financial mind and the ruthless business instinct. Back before I'd become just William's wife. The notebook contained everything I'd observed over the past 5 years, since the day I'd signed the papers making William sole owner of Williams & Associates. I'd kept notes out of habit at first, the methodical record-keeping of someone trained in forensic accounting. But as time passed and I noticed small discrepancies, unusual transactions, meetings that didn't appear on official calendars, the notes had become something else. Difference. I opened my laptop, an old model I'd kept from my working days, and began to transcribe the information into a spreadsheet. Hours passed as I worked, cross-referencing dates and amounts, following paper trails I'd carefully documented. Offshore accounts opened in the Cayman Islands. Shell corporations with familiar board members. Tax shelters that straddled the line between aggressive accounting and fraud. Government contracts secured through relationships that looked suspiciously like bribes. By evening, I had a clear picture of what William had been building while I'd been making his favorite meals and organizing his dry cleaning. A house of cards waiting for the right wind to blow it down. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, showed 17 missed calls from William and 12 from Chloe. I ignored them, instead dialing a number I'd saved years ago and never called. Jacobson Law Firm. The voice was professional, female, efficient. I need to speak with Patricia Jacobson, I said. Tell her Eleanor is calling about Williams & Associates. Pause. One moment, please. Patricia Jacobson and I had attended business school together, back when we were both young and ambitious and certain we'd change the world. She'd become one of the most feared corporate attorneys in the state, with a reputation for crushing opponents with meticulous precision. We'd lost touch over the years. I'd been busy being a wife and she'd been busy becoming a legend. Eleanor. Patricia's voice came through the line, warm with surprise. My God, I haven't heard from you in, 15 years? 16, I corrected. I need your help, Patricia. What kind of help? The kind that destroys lives. There was a brief silence, then a low chuckle. Now you're speaking my language. Tell me everything. I talked for an hour, laying out the betrayal, the divorce, the eviction. Then I told her about the notebook, the financial irregularities, the carefully documented evidence of William's less-than-legal business practices. Can you get me copies of the actual documents? Patricia asked, her voice sharp with interest. I have access to the company server for another week. William hasn't changed my passwords yet. He will, the moment he realizes what you're doing. Get me everything you can, Eleanor. Every file, every email, every document that proves what you're telling me. And Eleanor. Her voice softened slightly. Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. This will destroy him. It might destroy your daughter too if she's as involved as you suspect. I thought about Chloe calling me pathetic. About William handing me divorce papers on my birthday. About 32-year-old Vivian moving into my bedroom, sleeping in my bed, raising a baby in the house I'd made a home. I've never been more sure of anything, I said. Good. I like you better, vicious. Email me everything within 48 hours. And Eleanor? Welcome back. I've missed the woman you used to be. I spent the next 2 days in that motel room, living on coffee and vending machine snacks, downloading files from the company server. Financial reports, emails, contracts, meeting minutes. Everything I could access I copied, backed up and sent to Patricia's secure server. On the third day my access was revoked. William had finally realized I might be dangerous. My phone buzzed. Another call from him. I answered for the first time. Eleanor, what the hell do you think you're doing? His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. I don't know what you mean. The server logs show you downloaded files. Hundreds of files. That's company property, Eleanor. Confidential information. Is it? I kept my voice light, almost curious. According to the documents I signed 16 years ago, the ones you told me were just insurance paperwork, I was a founding partner of Williams & Associates. That means I have every legal right to access company information. Patricia Jacobson agrees. You remember Patricia, don't you? From business school. The silence on the other end was delicious. You've hired Patricia Jacobson? She sends her regards, by the way. She always thought you were an arrogant prick. Nice to know her instincts were sound. Eleanor, listen to me very carefully. No, William, you listen to me. I stood, pacing the small motel room, energy flooding through me. You spent 26 years making me feel small. Making me doubt myself. Making me believe I was nothing without you. But here's what you forgot, I made you. I built that business with you. I came up with the financial strategies that made us successful. I networked, I negotiated, I worked 18-hour days while pregnant with your child because I believed we were partners. That was years ago. And then you convinced me to sign those papers. To give up my stake in the company, for tax purposes. To put everything in your name because it would be simpler. And I trusted you because I loved you and because good wives trust their husbands. Eleanor, if you're thinking of causing trouble. Trouble? Oh, William. Trouble is what you caused when you decided to hand me divorce papers on my birthday. What I'm planning is something else entirely. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking not from fear but from adrenaline. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I felt alive. Angry. Powerful. Dangerous. Patricia called an hour later. I've reviewed the documents. Honor, this is gold. Absolute gold. We have him on tax evasion, fraud, misappropriation of federal funds, and about a dozen other charges that will have the SEC very interested. But there's something else. What? The prenup he claims you signed? It's not valid. The terms are unconscionable and there's evidence it was signed under duress. Plus, according to the original incorporation documents, which he apparently forgot to destroy, you're still listed as a 50% owner of Williams & Associates. That contract you signed 5 years ago? Legally unenforceable without proper counsel present, which there wasn't. He thought he was clever, but he was just sloppy. My heart began to pound. What does that mean? It means you own half of everything, Eleanor. The house, the business, the assets, all of it. And when we're done with him, you'll likely own much more. Plus, I'm filing an injunction to freeze all company assets pending investigation. He won't be able to move money, sell property, or access anything until this is sorted out. How long will that take? With what you've given me, we'll file Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, William's entire world will stop turning. I closed my eyes, letting relief and vindication wash over me. Thank you, Patricia. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly, Eleanor. Very ugly. He'll fight back. So will your daughter if she's smart. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Chloe's sneer, her casual cruelty, the way she'd laughed while watching me break. Let them fight, I said. I'm done being easy to hurt. The first call came on Monday at 9:47 a.m. I was sitting in a diner 3 towns over, drinking terrible coffee and eating scrambled eggs that tasted like cardboard. My phone buzzed. William's name flashed across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 9:52 a.m. and 9:58 a.m. and 10:03 a.m. By noon he'd called 11 times. I listened to exactly one voicemail just to savor the panic in his voice. Eleanor, I don't know what you've done, but the company accounts are frozen. The SEC is asking questions. You need to call me immediately and fix this. This is insane. This is vindictive. Call me back. Now. I deleted the message and ordered more coffee. Patricia called at 2:15 p.m. The injunction went through. All assets related to Williams and Associates are now frozen pending investigation. His personal accounts too, since we established they were commingled with business funds. He can't access anything except a basic allowance for living expenses. How do you feel? Like I'm breathing for the first time in years, I admitted. Good. Because it's about to get better. The IRS is very interested in those offshore accounts. So is the Department of Justice, given some of those government contracts were obtained through what they're calling questionable means. William might be looking at criminal charges, Eleanor. This isn't just about divorce anymore. I should have felt guilty. A good person, a good wife, would have felt some remorse for destroying the man she'd once loved. But all I felt was cold satisfaction. What about Chloe? I asked. She's listed as VP of Marketing, but I found emails suggesting she was aware of the financial irregularities. At minimum, she'll lose her job. At worst, she could face charges as an accomplice if she helped cover anything up. She called me pathetic, I said quietly. Well, Patricia replied, her voice sharp, Karma's a bitch and so am I. Chloe called for the first time that evening. I was back at the motel watching mindless television and eating Chinese takeout. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mom. Her voice was different. Smaller, younger, afraid. Hello, Chloe. Mom, what did you do? Dad's freaking out. The accounts are frozen. There are investigators at the office. People are saying, her voice cracked. They're saying Dad could go to jail. That I could lose my job. That we could lose everything. Imagine that, I said calmly, twirling lo mein around my fork. Losing everything. That must be terrible. Mom, please. You have to stop this. You have to tell them this is all a mistake. A mistake? Like the mistake I made trusting your father? Or the mistake I made believing my daughter loved me? I do love you. Now she was crying, big dramatic sobs that once would have broken my heart. Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. I was just upset and Dad was pushing me to. Dad was pushing you? I laughed, a hollow sound. Oh, Chloe. Don't blame him for your choices. You're 27 years old. You said what you said because you meant it. I didn't. I swear I didn't mean. Mom, please, you're my mother. You're supposed to forgive me. You're supposed to help us. We're your family. Family, I repeated the word slowly, tasting its bitterness. Did you think about family when you laughed while I signed divorce papers? Did your father think about family when he was sleeping with Vivian while I was home making his dinner? That's different. No, Chloe. It's exactly the same. You both decided I was disposable. Now you're learning what it feels like to be disposed of. You're being cruel. I'm being fair. There's a difference. I'm your daughter. She was shouting now, desperation making her voice shrill. You're supposed to love me no matter what. You're supposed to protect me. I did love you, I said softly. I loved you more than anything in this world. I would have died for you, Chloe. But you killed that love. You stood in our living room and called me pathetic and you watched me break and you laughed. So no, sweetheart. I don't have to protect you. I don't have to do anything for you ever again. Mom. I hung up. She called back immediately. I blocked the number. William called 17 more times that night. I blocked him too. By Wednesday my phone showed 45 missed calls from various numbers. William's cell, Chloe's cell, the house phone, William's office, numbers I didn't recognize that were probably borrowed phones or colleagues calling on their behalf. I blocked them all. Patricia and I met at her office on Thursday. She traded her usual power suits for something even more severe. Black on black, her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it could have been a weapon. She looked like an avenging angel and I'd never been more grateful to have her on my side. The investigation is moving faster than I expected, she said, spreading documents across her massive mahogany desk. The SEC found discrepancies dating back 7 years. The IRS is salivating over those offshore accounts. And the DOJ is building a case around the government contracts. How bad is it for him? Catastrophic. She smiled and it was a terrible, beautiful thing. If convicted on all counts, William could be looking at 15 to 20 years. The company will likely be dissolved, assets cease to pay restitution. The house is already in foreclosure proceedings since the mortgage was tied to business accounts. The house. Something twisted in my chest despite everything. Eleanor, he took out a second mortgage 3 years ago. Used the money to buy Vivian a condo downtown and finance his lifestyle. The house has been underwater for months. He just hadn't told you. Of course he hadn't. Why would he? I was just the pathetic wife who cleaned and cooked and asked no questions. What about Chloe? Patricia's expression darkened. She's in deeper than I initially thought. I found emails where she discussed hiding certain transactions, moving money between accounts to obscure the paper trail. She was actively participating in the fraud, Eleanor. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to protect her father. Even now, some maternal instinct made me want to defend her. She was trying to protect her income, Patricia corrected. Chloe was pulling down $200,000 a year plus bonuses. She had a vested interest in keeping the fraud going. This wasn't blind loyalty, Eleanor. This was greed. $200,000 a year. My daughter had been making more than most families while I'd been living on William's allowance, asking permission to buy groceries. Will she go to jail? Possibly. Probably if the prosecutor wants to make an example. She's young, photogenic, comes from privilege. The kind of defendant that plays well in media. The ambitious prosecutor heading this case? He loves the spotlight. He'll want to show that justice applies to everyone. I should have felt something. Horror, maternal anguish, the desperate need to protect my child. But all I felt was numb. There's one more thing, Patricia said carefully. Vivian came to see me. What? I sat forward. Why? She wanted to cut a deal. Testify against William in exchange for immunity. Apparently, she's been recording conversations with him for months. Insurance, she said. She knew the business was dirty and wanted leverage. She's pregnant with his child and she's willing to testify against him? Patricia shrugged. The baby gives her leverage for child support. His money, what's left of it after fines and restitution, will be hers through that child. He's smart, Eleanor. Ruthless but smart. She played William better than he ever played you. I laughed, a sharp bark of sound. So the 32-year-old mistress is the only one who comes out of this intact? Not intact, but surviving. She'll have to testify, which means her name will be public. She'll be known as the mistress who brought down a corrupt businessman. That's its own kind of prison. Patricia paused. She asked about you, actually. What did she say? She wanted to know if you were the one who turned William in. When I confirmed it, attorney-client privilege doesn't extend to casual conversation, she laughed. Said, good for her. He deserved it. Patricia leaned back in her chair. She's not what you'd expect, Eleanor. She's not some simpering mistress. He's calculating. In another life, she and William would have deserved each other. In this life they do, I said. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I'd stopped blocking them, there were too many now. Instead I just let them ring, a chorus of desperation I ignored. They're getting frantic, Patricia observed. William's attorneys have reached out 3 times asking for a meeting. They want to negotiate. What could he possibly offer me? Everything. Patricia's smile was predatory. He's willing to give you the house, his stake in the company, whatever you want if you'll just agree to say this was all a misunderstanding. That you didn't understand what you were looking at. He wants me to lie to federal investigators? He wants you to recant. To play the confused, naive wife who got in over her head. Patricia's eyes gleamed. He actually said that. The confused, naive wife. His lawyers nearly dropped him on the spot when I explained that you have an MBA in forensic accounting and were the original CFO of his company. What did you tell them? I told them that Eleanor Whitmore doesn't negotiate with people who serve her divorce papers on her birthday. And that if William wants to avoid prison, he should start being very, very cooperative with investigators. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of destruction settling around us. Are you okay? Patricia asked softly. I know this isn't easy, even when it's deserved. I keep waiting to feel guilty, I admitted. To feel like I've gone too far, become the villain in my own story. But I don't. I just feel free. That's because you're not the villain, Eleanor. You're the person who refused to be a victim. There's a difference. The news broke on Friday morning. Prominent business owner William Whitmore under investigation for fraud, tax evasion. The article was front page in the business section, complete with a photo of William being escorted from his office by federal agents. He looked older in the photo, smaller, his expensive suit rumpled and his face ashen. My phone exploded. Not with calls from William or Chloe this time, but from people I hadn't heard from in years. Former friends who'd drifted away during my marriage. Former colleagues from my brief career before I'd become just someone's wife. People who'd known the old Eleanor, the one with fire in her belly and steel in her spine. They all wanted to know, was I okay? I answered honestly. I was better than I'd been in 26 years. The story grew legs, spreading across social media and news outlets. People loved a good downfall story, especially when it involved wealthy privilege and betrayal. The comment sections were particularly brutal. Hope his wife takes him for everything. Imagine cheating on your wife and committing fraud. What a catch. The daughter's involved too? What kind of family is this? Someone had leaked the divorce details. The birthday party ambush, the eviction notice, Chloe's cruel words. I suspected Vivian, leveraging the story for public sympathy before her testimony. Smart girl. Public opinion turned Eleanor Whitmore into an unlikely hero. The devoted wife who'd discovered her husband's crimes and had the courage to turn him in. The woman scorned who'd gotten the ultimate revenge. They weren't wrong, but they weren't entirely right either. This wasn't about courage or justice. This was about survival. About refusing to disappear quietly into the night while they built new lives on the ruins of mine. William's attorneys held a press conference. He stood beside them, looking appropriately contrite, reading from a prepared statement about cooperating with investigators and having faith in the legal system. His voice wavered when he mentioned his family, asking for privacy during this difficult time. The cameras loved it. The public didn't. Too little, too late, one commentator said on the evening news. William Whitmore had years to make different choices. Instead, he chose fraud, infidelity, and treating his wife like collateral damage. Now he wants sympathy? Please. Chloe tried to distance herself, posting a statement on social media claiming she'd been unaware of her father's illegal activities and was cooperating fully with authorities. The statement was polished, professional, probably written by expensive attorneys. The emails Patricia had found told a different story. Someone leaked those too. Again, probably Vivian, burning bridges to save herself. The public turned on Chloe even harder than they turned on William. A wealthy, privileged daughter who'd helped her father commit fraud while mocking her own mother? The narrative practically wrote itself. Karma is real, one viral tweet read, along with screenshots of Chloe's social media posts about designer handbags and expensive vacations. While her mom was being handed divorce papers, she was spending money her dad stole. I hope she loses everything. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. This wasn't the revenge I'd imagined. I hadn't imagined anything really beyond surviving the next day. But watching my daughter's life implode in real time, seeing her name dragged through digital mud, reading comments calling her vile and disgusting and deserving of prison. Some part of me, the part that had rocked her to sleep and kissed her scraped knees and believed she'd grow up to be good, mourned. But only some part. The rest remembered her standing in that living room, champagne in hand, calling me pathetic. Patricia called on Sunday evening. The prosecutor wants to meet. He's building his case and wants your testimony about the company's early days. Establishing that you were a founding partner, that you understood business practices, that William's later actions represented a departure from legitimate operations. When? Tuesday morning. I'll be with you the entire time. Honor, this is it. Your testimony will likely determine how hard they come down on William and Chloe. The prosecutor is giving you significant power here. Power. Such a strange word after decades of powerlessness. What happens if I refuse to testify? The case continues, but it's weaker. They have documents, they have Vivian's testimony, but they don't have the wronged wife who witnessed the transformation from legitimate businessman to criminal. You're their most sympathetic witness. Without you, William might negotiate a lighter sentence. And Chloe might avoid jail time entirely if the case is weak enough. I sat with that information, turning it over in my mind like a stone. I had the power to destroy them completely or show mercy they'd never shown me. The choice was mine. On Monday, William showed up at my motel. I don't know how he found me. Probably hired an investigator, spent money he couldn't really afford anymore on tracking down his soon-to-be ex-wife. I saw him from my window standing in the parking lot looking lost and old in a way he'd never looked before. He'd aged a decade in 2 weeks. I could have pretended I wasn't there. Should have, probably. But curiosity, or maybe something darker, made me open the door. Eleanor. He said my name like a prayer. Thank you for seeing me. I haven't invited you in. I know. I need to talk to you. 5 minutes. Please. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You have 3. He flinched at the coldness in my voice. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what I'd felt. I'm sorry, he began. For everything. For the affair, for the divorce, for how I treated you. I was cruel and selfish and you didn't deserve any of it. No, I didn't. But Eleanor, what you're doing now, turning me into the authorities, destroying the company we built together, ruining Chloe's life. This isn't you. You're not vindictive. You're not cruel. How would you know what I am? I asked softly. You haven't actually looked at me in years, William. You've looked through me, around me, past me, but never at me. You have no idea who I am. I know you're better than this. Better than what? Better than seeking justice? Better than protecting myself? Better than refusing to be destroyed quietly? Better than revenge? His voice rose, frustration breaking through the contrition. This is about revenge, Eleanor. Admit it. You're angry, rightfully so, but you're letting that anger make you into someone you're not. I laughed, the sound echoing across the empty parking lot. You think this is about anger? William, anger would have been screaming at you that night. Anger would have been breaking your things and making scenes. This isn't anger. This is justice. Justice. He stepped closer, desperation making him bold. Chloe could go to jail, Eleanor. Our daughter. Your baby girl. How is that justice? She helped you commit fraud. She was young, impressionable, trying to please her father. She was 24 when it started, I interrupted. Old enough to vote, to drink, to know right from wrong. She made choices, William. Now she gets to live with them. She's your daughter. And you're my husband. Or were, until you decided I was disposable. I pushed off from the doorframe, standing straight. You want to know what's truly amazing? You're here begging me to save Chloe, but you haven't once asked how I am. If I'm okay. If I have a place to live or money for food. Even now, even after everything, you can't see me as anything more than a means to an end. He opened his mouth, then closed it, realization dawning in his eyes. You came here to manipulate me, I continued. To play on my maternal instincts and my empathy and my decades of being the woman who fixes things. You thought if you apologized prettily enough I'd fold. I'd recant. I'd lie to federal investigators to save our daughter. Eleanor. But here's what you don't understand. I'm not that woman anymore. She died the night you handed her divorce papers on her birthday. What's standing here now is someone different. Someone who remembers that before I was your wife I was Eleanor Whitmore and I was magnificent. So you're going to destroy us? Is that it? Destroy me and Chloe and everything we built. I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. I'm simply telling the truth. You destroyed yourselves years ago. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. He stared at me, this stranger wearing my husband's face, and I saw the moment he understood. There would be no negotiation. No mercy. No last-minute salvation. I loved you, he whispered. No, I replied. You loved what I did for you. You loved having a wife who made you look good and asked for nothing. You loved the idea of me. But you never actually loved me, William. If you had, you couldn't have done what you did. I stepped back into my motel room and closed the door in his face. I didn't lock it, didn't need to. He wouldn't try to force his way in. He was too civilized for that, even in desperation. I heard him stand there for a long moment, heard what might have been a sob or just the wind. Then footsteps retreating across gravel. An engine starting. Silence. I sat on the edge of my bed and cried for the 3rd time since the divorce. Not for him. Not even for Chloe, really. But for the life I'd imagined, the family I'd believed in, the future that had evaporated like morning mist. When the tears stopped, I washed my face, reapplied makeup and called Patricia. I'm testifying, I said. I'm telling them everything. Are you sure? Completely. Eleanor, this will destroy them. You understand that? Once you testify, there's no walking it back. William will go to prison. Chloe will likely follow him. I understand. And you're okay with that? I thought about William's face in the parking lot, still not asking if I was okay. About Chloe's sneering words, "You're pathetic." About 26 years of making myself smaller so they could be bigger. I'm better than okay, I said. Schedule the meeting. I'll be there. The prosecutor's office was all glass and steel, cold and impersonal, exactly the kind of place where lives changed forever. James Morrison, the prosecutor, was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and sharper suits. He'd made his name prosecuting white-collar crime, and he wanted William's head on a platter. Mrs. Whitmore. He greeted me, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy. Miss Whitmore, I corrected. Or just Eleanor. I'm not married anymore. He nodded, making a note. Patricia sat beside me, her presence a shield. For 3 hours I told them everything. I walked them through the early days of Williams and Associates, back when it was really Whitmore and Williams, though my name never made it onto the letterhead. I described the financial strategies I'd developed, the clients I'd brought in, the late nights working on proposals while pregnant with Chloe. Then I described the slow shift, how William had gradually pushed me out, suggesting I should focus on family, on supporting his career. How the papers I'd signed had been presented as routine, necessary, nothing to worry about. Did you read these documents before signing? Morrison asked, spreading them across the conference table. No, I admitted. I trusted my husband. He said they were insurance paperwork, tax documents, just formalities. And you didn't think to have them reviewed by independent counsel? I was a wife, I said simply. Not a business partner. Not anymore. He'd made that very clear. My role was to trust and support, not question. Morrison nodded, sympathy flickering across his face. Tell me about the financial irregularities you observed. I walked them through the notebook, the transactions that didn't make sense, the money moving in strange patterns. I explained offshore accounts and shell corporations in language a jury could understand. I made it clear, simple, damning. When did you first suspect criminal activity? About 3 years ago. There was a government contract. A big one worth millions. William came home celebrating, but when I looked at the public records, our company hadn't actually submitted the lowest bid. We should have lost, but we won anyway. And what did you conclude? That someone had been bribed. That the competition had been rigged. Did you confront your husband? No. Why not? I met Morrison's eyes. Because by then I knew I wasn't a partner. I was a liability. If I asked questions, I'd be cut out completely. So I stayed quiet and I started keeping records. Insurance. Insurance against what? Against ending up exactly where I ended up. Divorced, evicted, told I had no claim to anything I'd helped build. I knew that if William ever decided I was disposable, I'd need proof that I'd been there from the beginning. That I'd been complicit, yes, but also that I'd built something before it became corrupt. Patricia squeezed my hand under the table. Morrison leaned forward. Let's talk about your daughter. My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. What would you like to know? Chloe Whitmore was VP of Marketing. Our investigation suggests she was aware of the fraudulent activities. These emails, he slid several printouts toward me, show her discussing how to massage the numbers and adjust the presentation to hide certain transactions. In your opinion, did she understand she was participating in fraud? I looked at the emails. Chloe's words, bright and confident, discussing criminal activity with the casual tone of someone ordering coffee. My baby girl who I'd raised to be good and honest and kind. Yes, I whispered. She knew. Could you speak up for the recording? Yes, I said louder. She knew exactly what she was doing. Chloe has a degree in business from Stanford. He's brilliant. These emails aren't the words of someone confused or manipulated. They're the words of someone actively participating in fraud. Even though that means she'll likely face criminal charges? I looked at Patricia, who nodded slightly. Then back at Morrison. My daughter called me pathetic, I said quietly. She stood in my living room and laughed while I signed divorce papers on my birthday. She knew her father was cheating. She knew about Vivian, about the baby, about the plan to evict me from my own home. And she not only supported it, she encouraged it. So yes, Mr. Morrison. Even though it means she'll face charges. Truth is truth regardless of who it hurts. The room fell silent. We'll need you to testify to all of this in court, Morrison said finally. You understand that? You'll sit on a witness stand with your husband and daughter watching, and you'll repeat everything you've told me today. I understand. It will be brutal. Their attorneys will try to paint you as a vindictive ex-wife seeking revenge. They'll attack your character, your credibility, your motives. Let them. They'll ask if you still love your daughter, if you want to see her go to prison, if you feel any guilt for destroying your family. And I'll answer honestly, I said. I do still love Chloe, or I love the memory of who she was before greed turned her into someone I don't recognize. Do I want to see her go to prison? No. But do I want to see justice served? Absolutely. And as for destroying my family, they destroyed it first. I'm just refusing to protect them from the consequences. Morrison studied me for a long moment. You're stronger than they counted on. Everyone is, I replied. Until they're not. We finished the interview as afternoon light slanted through the windows. My voice was hoarse from talking, my body exhausted from holding itself together. But I'd done it. I told the truth, the whole truth, damn the consequences. Patricia walked me to my car. I'd upgraded from the motel to a modest apartment, thanks to an emergency advance on the settlement I'd eventually receive. You did well in there, she said. I destroyed them. You told the truth. They destroyed themselves. Is there a difference? Sometimes. She paused. Eleanor, you know this is going to get worse before it gets better? The trial will be a media circus. Every detail of your marriage will be public. They'll dig up everything. Old photos, old friends, old stories. Your life will be dissected. Better than being erased, I said. She smiled. The old Eleanor is really back, isn't she? Maybe. Or maybe this is just who I've always been underneath the wife and mother costume. Hard to say. I drove back to my apartment. A simple one-bedroom in a complex that catered to divorcees and people starting over. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No memories haunted these walls. No ghosts whispered in the corners. My phone showed 6 new missed calls. Unknown numbers, all of them. I didn't bother listening to the voicemails. What could they possibly say that would matter? That night I cooked myself dinner, just pasta and vegetables, nothing fancy, and ate it at my small table while reading a book I'd bought on impulse. A mystery novel about a woman who disappeared and reinvented herself somewhere new. I was halfway through when someone knocked on my door. I froze. Nobody knew where I lived except Patricia and the landlord. I looked through the peephole and saw Chloe standing in the hallway, mascara smudged, eyes red from crying. For a long moment I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just watched my daughter stand there, small and broken, everything I'd once promised to protect. She knocked again. Mom? I know you're there. Please. I just want to talk. I could have stayed silent. Should have. But some masochistic part of me needed to hear what she'd say, needed to know if there was any piece of the daughter I'd raised still living inside this stranger. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Mom. She said it like a sob. Mom, please, you have to stop this. The prosecutor called my lawyer. They're saying I could get 10 years. 10 years, Mom. I can't go to prison. Please. What do you want me to do, Chloe? Tell them you were wrong. Tell them you misunderstood the documents, that you didn't know what you were looking at. But I did know what I was looking at. That's the problem. Then lie. Her voice rose, desperate. I'm your daughter. You're supposed to protect me. I did protect you, I said quietly. For 27 years I protected you from every hurt, every disappointment, every consequence. I made excuses for you when you were cruel to classmates. I smoothed over problems when you cheated on exams. I convinced your father to hire you at the company even though you weren't qualified because I wanted you to have every opportunity. Exactly. So protect me now. No. The word was simple, final. I'm done protecting you from yourself, Chloe. You're an adult. You made choices. Now you live with them. I made mistakes. You committed crimes. There's a difference. Because of Dad. He pushed me into it. He made me think it was normal business practice. Stop lying. My voice was sharp enough to cut. You have emails dated 6 months before you joined the company, Chloe. Emails where you discussed working with Dad to clean up the books. You knew exactly what you were getting into. You just thought you'd never get caught. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. You've changed. The mom I knew would never do this. The mom you knew died the night you called her pathetic, I replied. You and your father killed her. What's standing here is what survived. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. You meant every word. And you know what? You were right. I was pathetic. I'd made myself pathetic by caring more about you than I cared about myself. But I'm not anymore. So you're just going to let me go to prison? Your own daughter. I'm going to let justice happen. If that means prison, then yes. She laughed, a broken, bitter sound. You're heartless. You're a monster. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe I'm just done being a martyr. I hate you. He spat the words like venom. I hate you so much. That's okay, I said softly. I loved you enough for both of us. But that love doesn't mean I'll lie for you. It doesn't mean I'll destroy myself to save you. You're going to have to save yourself this time, Chloe. I closed the door while she was still standing there, still crying, still trying to find words that would change my mind. I heard her pound on the door once, twice, then her footsteps retreating down the hall. I slid down to the floor, my back against the door, and wrapped my arms around my knees. My body shook, but no tears came. I'd cried myself dry over my daughter. There was nothing left. An hour later my phone rang. Fisha. Chloe's lawyers just called, she said. They're offering a deal. Full cooperation, testimony against William in exchange for reduced charges. She's turning on him? Like rats fleeing a sinking ship. She'll probably get probation instead of jail time if she plays this right. Community service, restitution, a criminal record. But no prison. And William goes down harder without her supporting his version of events. He's looking at the maximum sentence now. Good, I said and meant it. The trial began on a cold January morning, the courthouse steps slick with ice. Media vans lined the street, reporters shouting questions at anyone who looked relevant. I wore a navy suit Patricia had helped me choose, professional, dignified, the uniform of a woman who'd done nothing wrong. William arrived in a town car flanked by attorneys in expensive suits. He'd lost weight, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. He saw me across the courthouse plaza and flinched as if I might strike him. I didn't smile. Didn't acknowledge him at all. Just walked inside with my head high. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more intimate. Every seat filled with journalists, curious onlookers, federal investigators who'd worked the case. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Catherine Hayes, looked like she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. William's trial came first. Chloe had taken her deal, would testify against him in exchange for leniency. The ultimate betrayal from the daughter who'd stood by his side while destroying me. Karma, it seemed, had a sense of irony. Vivian testified first, her pregnancy visible now, a gentle swell under expensive maternity clothes. She was poised, credible, devastating. She described conversations where William had explicitly discussed hiding money, bribing officials, falsifying documents. She played recordings, her insurance policy, that captured him in his own words planning crimes. The jury listened with rapt attention. Then it was my turn. I took the stand on the third day of trial, my hand shaking slightly as I swore to tell the truth. The prosecution went first, walking me through the company's history, my role in its founding, the documents I'd signed without understanding their full implications. Ms. Whitmore, the prosecutor asked, in your professional opinion as someone with an MBA in forensic accounting, was your husband's business engaged in criminal activities? Yes. And when did you become aware of these activities? Approximately 3 years ago. Why didn't you report them immediately? I met William's eyes across the courtroom. He looked away first. Because I was afraid, I said honestly. Afraid of losing my family. Afraid of being alone. Afraid that if I spoke up, I'd lose everything and he'd find a way to make me the villain. I paused. I was right about that last part. When I finally did speak up, he tried to paint me as vindictive and unstable. The difference is that this time I had evidence. The prosecution rested. Then came William's defense attorney, a sharp woman named Rebecca Torres who'd made her reputation defending the indefensible. Ms. Whitmore, she began, her tone dripping with skepticism, isn't it true that you only came forward with these allegations after your husband filed for divorce? Yes. So this is revenge. A spurned wife seeking to destroy her ex-husband. This is justice, I corrected. A woman seeking to hold a criminal accountable. But you participated in the company's activities for years. You signed documents. You benefited from the money these alleged crimes generated. Doesn't that make you complicit? Yes, I admitted. It does. I should have spoken up sooner. I should have risked my comfortable life to do the right thing. I didn't, and I'll regret that forever. But the fact that I was complicit doesn't make what he did legal. It just means I enabled it by staying silent. Torres shifted tactics. You claim to have kept detailed records of your husband's activities. Why, that seems paranoid, doesn't it? The act of someone planning revenge. It seems like the act of someone who'd learned not to trust her husband, I replied. And I wasn't wrong, was I? The minute I became inconvenient, he tried to erase me from the company we'd built together. My paranoia was justified. But you can't deny that you're here because you're angry. Because he cheated on you. Because he wanted a divorce. I'm here because he committed crimes, I said evenly. If he'd divorced me honestly, divided assets fairly, acknowledged my contributions, treated me with basic human decency, we wouldn't be in this courtroom. But he didn't. He tried to take everything while giving me nothing. And in doing so, he handed me every reason to look closely at exactly how he'd built his empire. So you admit this is personal? Of course it's personal. He's my husband. Or was. Everything about this is personal. But personal doesn't mean untrue. The cross-examination continued for hours, Torres trying every angle to discredit me. She brought up my lack of a career, implying I was bitter about being a housewife. He questioned my memory, my motives, my timing. I answered every question calmly, truthfully, without malice. By the time I stepped down from the witness stand, I was exhausted but proud. I told my truth. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. Chloe testified the next day. I almost didn't stay to watch, but Patricia convinced me. You need to see this, she said. You need to understand what she's become. So I sat in the gallery and watched my daughter take the stand. She dressed carefully. A simple dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger, more vulnerable. The perfect defendant seeking sympathy. She testified against her father with clinical precision, describing conversations and meetings and decisions that implicated him completely. She portrayed herself as young, naive, manipulated by a powerful father figure she trusted. It was a masterful performance. And it was working. The jury watched her with sympathy, nodding along as she dabbed at manufactured tears. On cross-examination, William's attorney tried to break her story, but Chloe held firm. Yes, she'd participated. Yes, she'd known it was wrong. But she'd been afraid to speak up, afraid to disappoint her father, afraid to lose her job. I wish I'd been braver, she said, her voice breaking perfectly. Like my mother. She risked everything to do the right thing. I wish I'd had her courage. The courtroom murmured appreciatively. Even the judge looked moved. I felt nothing. This wasn't my daughter. This was a stranger wearing her face, performing contrition she didn't feel, saying whatever words would save her skin. When we broke for lunch, Chloe tried to approach me in the hallway. Mom. Don't. I held up my hand. Just don't. I meant what I said in there. About wishing I'd been brave like you. You don't even know what brave means, Chloe. Brave isn't performing on the stand to save yourself. Brave is accepting consequences for your choices. You're not brave. You're just good at survival. Her face hardened, the mask slipping for just a moment. At least I'm surviving. Dad's going to prison. You made sure of that. No, Chloe. He made sure of that when he committed crimes. I just refused to help him hide them. Semantics, she spat. You destroyed our family. Our family was already destroyed. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. She stared at me, searching for something, forgiveness maybe, or maternal softness she could exploit. She found neither. You've become someone I don't recognize, she said finally. Funny, I replied. I was just thinking the same about you. She walked away, her heels clicking against marble floors, and I felt the last thread connecting us snap. My daughter was gone, had been gone for years probably. I'd just been too invested in the illusion to notice. The trial concluded 3 weeks later. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. William's face crumbled as the judge read each one. Fraud. Tax evasion. Bribery. Conspiracy. The list went on, each word another nail in the coffin of the life he'd built on lies. Sentencing came 2 months later. The judge was not merciful. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, her voice echoing through the hushed courtroom, "you held a position of trust and privilege. You could have built something legitimate, something that contributed to society. Instead you chose corruption. You chose greed. And when your crimes began to unravel, you attempted to sacrifice your wife, the woman who'd stood by you for 26 years, to save yourself." William's attorney tried to interject, but Judge Hayes continued. "This court sees no remorse, no genuine acceptance of responsibility. Even now you blame others for your choices. Therefore, it is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 10 years. 18 years. William would be 75 when he got out, his life essentially over. He turned to look at me, his eyes pleading for something. Sympathy, regret, some sign that I felt guilty for my role in his destruction. I looked back at him with calm indifference. Chloe's sentencing was separate, quieter. Thanks to her cooperation, she received 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and a criminal record that would follow her forever. No jail time, but her career was over. No company would hire someone convicted of fraud, no matter how reduced the charges. She'd have to rebuild from nothing, just like I had. The media called it the trial of the year. Think pieces proliferated about marriage, betrayal, the courage it took to turn in your own family. Some painted me as a hero. Others called me vindictive. I didn't read any of it. The house sold at auction 4 months after the trial. A young family bought it. A doctor and his wife, 2 small children, a dog. They seemed happy, excited, completely unaware of the ghosts that haunted those rooms. I watched from my car as they moved in, carrying boxes of their life into the skeleton of mine. The wife pointed at the garden, my garden, and smiled. She'd probably plant new flowers, make new memories, fill those rooms with laughter instead of betrayal. Good. The house deserved better than what we'd given it. The company was dissolved, its assets seized and sold to pay restitution to the government and the people William had defrauded. Williams and Associates ceased to exist, wiped from the business world as thoroughly as if it had never been. The settlement from the divorce, what little was left after legal fees and restitution, gave me enough to start over. Not in luxury but in comfort. I bought a small house in a different state, somewhere nobody knew my story. 2 bedrooms, a modest yard, neighbors who smiled and waved but didn't ask too many questions. I planted a garden. Different flowers this time, varieties I'd never tried before. I wanted nothing that reminded me of the old life. Patricia helped me get my CPA license reinstated. It had lapsed during my years as just someone's wife, but the certification itself never expired. With her recommendation, I found work at a mid-sized accounting firm that valued competence over drama. My new colleagues didn't know about the trial. Didn't know about William or Chloe or the spectacular implosion of my previous life. To them, I was just Eleanor, the new senior accountant with the quiet demeanor and sharp eye for numbers. I preferred it that way. 6 months after William's sentencing, I received a letter from him. It had been forwarded through Patricia. He didn't have my new address and I intended to keep it that way. I almost threw it away unopened. Almost. Curiosity, or maybe masochism, made me tear it open. Eleanor, I've had a lot of time to think in here. About us, about what I did, about how everything fell apart. I want you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I hurt you. I've been attending therapy sessions they offer here, and my therapist says I have narcissistic tendencies. That I struggle to see other people as fully real, with needs and feelings that matter as much as mine. I think she's right. I looked at you for 26 years and never really saw you. I saw what you could do for me, how you made my life easier, how you reflected well on me. But I didn't see you as a person with your own dreams and needs and worth. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for all of it. I know you'll never forgive me and I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know that I understand now. You weren't vindictive when you turned me in. You were just finally putting yourself first, and I hated you for it because it meant I couldn't use you anymore. You deserve better than I ever gave you. I hope you're finding it. William. I read the letter 3 times, searching for manipulation, for hidden agendas, for the trap I'd learned to expect from him. But it seemed genuine. or as genuine as William was capable of being. I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. Not because I treasured it, but because it was evidence. Proof that even people who've hurt us terribly can sometimes grow enough to recognize what they've done. Recognition wasn't redemption. Understanding wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. I never wrote back. Chloe's letter arrived a month later. Unlike William's, hers was angry. I hope you're happy. You got exactly what you wanted. Dad in prison, me unemployable, our entire family destroyed. Congratulations. You say you did this for justice, but we both know the truth. You did it for revenge. Because Dad didn't love you anymore. Because I didn't worship you the way I did when I was a kid. Because we dared to have lives that didn't revolve around you. You were always the martyr, always the victim. Even now, you've convinced everyone that you're some kind of hero for destroying your own family. It's pathetic. I'm rebuilding my life without you. I'm finding work, making new connections, proving that I'm more than my mistakes. And I'm doing it without a mother because the woman who raised me wouldn't have done what you did. That woman is dead, and I don't know this cold stranger who replaced her. Don't contact me. Don't try to reconcile. You made your choice when you testified. Now live with it, Chloe. I read her letter once and threw it away. There was no growth there, no recognition, no understanding. Just blame and anger and the same manipulation tactics she'd learned from her father. She still saw herself as the victim, me as the villain. Maybe she always would. I grieved for her. For the daughter I'd lost, for the relationship we'd never repair, for the future that would never include her. But I didn't regret my choices. Some bridges need to burn. A year after the trial, I barely recognized my own life. I woke up in my small house without dread. I went to work where my contributions were valued, where I used the skills I'd buried for decades. I came home to silence that felt peaceful instead of lonely. I made friends. Real friends, not the shallow acquaintances who'd orbited William's success. Sarah from work, who invited me to book club. Margaret from next door, who taught me to knit while we drank wine on her porch. David, a divorce teacher I met at the grocery store, who asked me to dinner with such nervous sincerity I couldn't say no. I said yes to things. To coffee dates and movie nights and weekend trips to nearby towns. To pottery classes and volunteer work and all the small adventures I'd denied myself during my marriage. I learned who Eleanor was when she wasn't someone's wife or mother. She was funny, it turned out. Quick-witted with a dry sense of humor that made people laugh. She was smart. Everyone had known that, but now she got to use her intelligence for herself instead of supporting someone else's ambitions. She was kind but not infinitely giving. She had boundaries now, lines she wouldn't cross even for people she loved. She was surprisingly happy. Not every day. Some mornings I still woke up expecting to hear William's voice, Chloe's laughter. Some nights I dreamed about the mansion, about family dinners that never really existed the way I remembered them. But most days were good. Most days I felt alive in a way I hadn't for decades. Patricia and I had lunch once a month, our friendship deepening beyond attorney-client into something real. Over salads and iced tea, she'd update me on her caseload and I'd tell her about my quiet, ordinary life. "You've done well," she told me one afternoon, raising her glass in a toast. "Seriously, Eleanor. Most people don't survive what you went through. They certainly don't thrive." "I'm not sure I'm thriving," I said. "I'm just existing. Peacefully. That's thriving after everything you've been through. Peaceful existence is revolutionary for someone who spent 26 years in chaos disguised as normalcy." I considered that. He was right in a way. Peace was revolutionary when you'd spent decades accommodating other people's chaos. "Have you heard anything about William or Chloe?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Patricia's expression darkened. William's appeal was denied. He'll serve his full sentence. As for Chloe, she hesitated. She's working as a waitress in Seattle. Under a different name, trying to escape the stigma. Good for her, I said, and meant it without malice. I hope she figures out who she wants to be. No anger left? Anger requires energy I'd rather spend elsewhere. I paused. I wasted 26 years on them, Patricia. I won't waste another minute. We finished our lunch talking about other things. Her latest case, my garden, a vacation I was planning to Italy. Just two friends chatting about life. It felt miraculous. 2 years after the trial, I was promoted to partner at my firm. The ceremony was small. Just the other partners, a few colleagues, champagne in plastic cups. But it meant something. It meant I'd rebuilt professional respect on my own merit. No one handed me this position because I was someone's wife. I'd earned it through competence and dedication and the sharp financial mind I'd buried for far too long. That night, David took me to dinner to celebrate. We'd been seeing each other for 6 months. Nothing serious, just companionship and conversation and the gentle affection of two people who'd both been burned and were learning to trust again. "I'm proud of you," he said over dessert. "The work you've put in, the person you've become, it's remarkable." "I'm just doing my job," I demurred. "No," he said firmly. "You're doing so much more than that. You're showing everyone who wrote you off as just a housewife, exactly who Eleanor Whitmore is. And she's pretty damn impressive." I felt tears prick my eyes, happy tears, the kind I'd thought I'd forgotten how to cry. "Thank you," I whispered. He reached across the table and took my hand, his touch warm and steady. "For what?" "For seeing me." He smiled. "Eleanor, you're impossible to miss." We left the restaurant and walked through the downtown area, looking in shop windows, talking about everything and nothing. It was ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of evening that would never make a story worth telling. And it was perfect. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning, no return address, postmarked from a federal prison in Ohio. I knew who it was from before I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Old, faded, the colors slightly washed out. It showed William and me on our wedding day, young and happy and stupidly hopeful. We were looking at each other like we'd hung the moon, like nothing could ever touch us. On the back, in William's handwriting, "I'm sorry for destroying this. For destroying you. I hope you found a way to be happy again. You always deserved happiness. W." I stared at that photograph for a long time, studying the faces of two people I barely recognized. They looked so certain, so convinced that love was enough. They'd been wrong, of course. Love wasn't enough when it was one-sided, when it demanded you diminish yourself, when it confused sacrifice with devotion. But they'd tried. And for a while in those early years it had been real. I placed the photograph in the drawer with William's letter. The drawer of things I acknowledged but didn't dwell on. Then I made myself coffee and got ready for work. My phone rang as I was leaving. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mom." My breath caught. Chloe's voice, small and uncertain in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Chloe." I wasn't sure you'd answer. Pause. "How are you?" "I'm well." "You?" "I'm okay. Working. Trying to figure things out." Another pause, longer this time. "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." "Thank you. How did you hear?" "I still follow the firm's website sometimes. I like to see what you're doing." That admission hung between us, fragile and complicated. "Chloe, why are you calling?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "I've been in therapy. Working through everything. My therapist suggested I might want to reach out, but I'm not sure." Her voice cracked. "I don't know if you'd even want to hear from me." "What do you want from this call?" I asked, not unkindly. "I don't know that either. Maybe just to hear your voice. To tell you that I'm sorry, even though I know sorry doesn't fix anything. To ask if there's any chance." She stopped. "No. Never mind. That's not fair." "What were you going to ask?" "If there's any chance you could forgive me someday. But I know that's too much. After everything I said, everything I did." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of history, of hurt, of the complicated love between mothers and daughters. "Chloe, I can't give you forgiveness right now. Maybe not ever. What you did, what you said, it broke something in me that I'm still rebuilding." "I know. I understand. But," I continued, "I don't hate you. I'm not spending my days wishing ill on you. I want you to build a good life, to become someone you're proud of. I just don't know if that life can include me." She was crying now, soft sobs she tried to muffle. "I miss you, Mom. I miss you so much." "I miss you too," I admitted. "I miss the daughter I raised, the little girl who used to bring me dandelions and call them flowers. But I don't know if that girl exists anymore or if she ever really did." "I'm trying to find her again," Chloe whispered. "I'm trying to be better." "Then I hope you succeed. Genuinely. But Chloe, I can't be part of that process. I can't be your motivation or your redemption. You have to do this for yourself. So this is it. This is goodbye." I thought about that. About closure and healing and the stories we tell ourselves about family. This is me wishing you well from a distance, I said finally. Maybe someday that distance will shrink. Maybe not. But right now this is what I can offer. Okay, she said quietly. Hey. Thank you for taking my call, Mom. And for everything you did for me before I ruined it. Take care of yourself, Chloe. You, Mom. You too. She hung up and I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, might never be ready. But perhaps the beginning of letting go. Of releasing the anger and hurt and disappointment so they couldn't poison the life I was building. I put down the phone, picked up my briefcase and headed to work. The office was busy when I arrived, phones ringing, colleagues rushing between meetings. Sarah stopped by my office with coffee and gossip about the new client. Margaret texted about dinner plans for the weekend. David sent a silly meme that made me smile. This was my life now. Not perfect, not what I'd imagined at 28 when I'd stood at an altar promising forever. But it was mine. Every choice, every consequence, every small joy, all mine. At lunch, I sat in the park near my office eating a sandwich and watching people pass by. A young couple walked hand in hand, looking at each other the way William and I once had. I felt no bitterness watching them, no cynicism. Just hope that they'd be kinder to each other than we'd been. That they'd choose partnership over possession, love over control. My phone buzzed. Patricia texting about our monthly lunch. I confirmed the date, added it to my calendar, smiled at her string of celebratory emojis. 3 years ago, I'd stood in a living room in a black dress and pearls, signing away my marriage on my birthday. 3 years ago, I'd thought my life was ending. I'd been wrong. It was just beginning. That night, I cooked dinner for myself. Lemon chicken, roasted vegetables, a glass of wine. I ate at my small table, reading a book, occasionally looking up at the garden visible through my window. The flowers I'd planted were blooming, different varieties than I'd grown before, but beautiful in their own way. Tomorrow I'd go to work. I'd use my brilliant mind for myself, not in service to someone else's ambition. I'd have lunch with colleagues who valued me. I'd come home to a house that held no ghosts. And maybe someday I'd even forgive Chloe. Not because she deserved it, but because holding on to that hurt was like drinking poison and expecting her to die. But that day wasn't today. Today I was simply Eleanor Whitmore. Not someone's wife, not someone's mother, not someone's victim. Just Eleanor. And for the first time in 26 years that was enough. I raised my wine glass to the empty room, to the life I'd lost and the one I'd found, to the woman I'd been and the one I'd become. To new beginnings, I whispered. The words echoed in the silence, a promise and a benediction. And then I took a sip, tasting freedom and possibility and the sweet, sharp flavor of a life finally lived on my own terms.